In this video I'm going to talk about my experience as a Dutch person living in the UK. And initially I moved here in 2014 when I did a postdoctoral research fellowship at Quirky British University of London. Then I moved to Manchester and I finally ended up in Newcastle, where I work at the university as a senior lecturer in the School of Engineering. Before moving here I had been to London many times, and most people would have visited as the capital, but living in the rest of the country is quite different. So here are some of the things that I noticed, which were a bit unusual to me. When you work in the Netherlands, you would find everyone at a fixed time around the coffee machine to share a cup of coffee and have a little break together. In the UK, it's obviously all about tea time. So I remember when I moved here to Newcastle, the first thing I got before I even entered my office was a kettle so I could make my own tea. It's definitely true, the first thing British people would do when they're upset, make a cup of tea. And for me it was also quite strange that the milk that kind of goes with it, because that's something that you would never do in the Netherlands. Another thing here is cycling. You know, being Dutch, you're obviously used to cycling all the time, and we don't cycle with a helmet. But here it's quite necessary in the traffic, I would say, because you don't necessarily have dedicated cycle lanes, so that's quite different. And the other thing is the country is actually quite hilly, whereas in the Netherlands it's obviously completely flat. So it can be quite daunting to cycle from one place to the other. And something the British are actually really good at is queuing. You would find these random queues everywhere. And even after, like, a surprise, even after a football match, you would have supporters with different teams nicely queuing alongside each other. No one is trying to jump the queue. That definitely wouldn't be happening in the Netherlands. The weather is probably quite the same. It's just as unpredictable in the UK as it is in the Netherlands. I never left my house in Manchester without an umbrella. And even here for the last couple of days, it's sunny, so first ray of sun, people would take off their tops in Newcastle, you would find everyone sunbathing, and the next day you would go from something which is nearly 20 degrees to almost like freezing. And you can't complain to everyone about the weather. But what I would say, and what I've looked up, it actually rains just as much in the Netherlands as it does in the UK. So using the rain as an excuse not to cycle, not a good excuse. The Dutch do have some funny breakfast rituals, so we often would have sweet things on our bread. And we would eat bread for lunch, we would have bread for breakfast, we take our sandwiches most often with cheese everywhere. So if you would go to the theme park or if you would go out, you would often find that the Dutch would bring their own sandwiches in Tupperware, just to save money, because they say we are thrifty. And even though that's a funny habit, I still prefer that over having a bacon butty or something else from Greggs, which is obviously very popular here in Newcastle. And other things that I noticed are, for instance, the obsession with Christmas. You know, going into shops in months in advance, you would hear Christmas music playing, whereas if you're Dutch, you would have Sinterklaas, which is in the beginning of December, and only after that we would start preparing for Christmas. So it's not quite as a big thing as it is here in the UK, because here when you get to December, you're already tired of all the Christmas music that you hear everywhere in the shop. Other common things is that the Brits, they do apologise for everything, they almost make like a sport out of it, whereas Dutch people tend to be a little bit more direct. But obviously there are many good things here about living in the UK. I would say I definitely like some of the food, even though I'm not a massive fan of fish and chips, sorry to say that. I do really like some of the traditional pies and the pub food, and you do have some really amazing desserts like sticky toffee puddings. Even though I've been living in the UK for quite a while now, there are some of the Dutch habits that you never give up. So I could still have haverslag for my breakfast, I would still take my sandwiches for lunch, and I can still cycle into work if I want to. If you would like to know more about my work at Newcastle University and what it actually is that a chemical engineer does, then have a look at these recommended videos. And thanks for watching.